Facebook. Everyone knows about it. Most of us use it. Facebook is a great platform for us to message friends, socialize on the internet, and generally waste time. However, everything we do on Facebook creates a piece of data about us and is stored in Facebook servers. In 2018, it was revealed that a political consulting firm called Cambridge Analytica obtained user data of over 80 million Facebook users and used that data to create advertisement for the Trump campaign. All of this was done without consent. Later on in 2019, more privacy scandals have been revealed, such as leaked Instagram passwords and phone numbers. Facebook and Mark Zuckerberg have been criticized for inaction and lack of improvements. As discussed in class, one of the key aspects of a company's responsibility towards the consumer is the right to be safe. While no one was harmed physically, a lot of personal information was stolen and abused. On that count, Facebook failed miserably. My prediction is that more scandals like this will continue. With how weak Facebook's software have looked, I wouldn't be surprised if more privacy issues happen in the future.
In the United States today, you are statistically more likely to die from an opioid overdose than you are to die in a car crash. This statistic is representative of the severity of the opioid crisis, which affects not only the US, but many other first world countries as well. This crisis involves drugs that are classified as opioids, such as codeine, oxycodone, morphine, fentanyl, and most importantly, heroin. The big pharma industry knows how addictive these drugs are, and yet they continue to produce them in order to increase their revenues. In 4 years alone, opioid overdose deaths have tripled, and yet concrete actions have yet to be taken. Due to the increase in prices of the prescribed opioids, many addicts have turned to the cheaper and more accessible heroin, which is often laced with other drugs such as fentanyl, another opiate, which causes overdose. These addicts often became addicted due to the pharmaceutical industry producing and prescribing these drugs, despite being aware of how extremely addictive they are. It's already a major crisis across the globe, but without some sort of intervention, it may become much, much worse. The companies producing them are not adhering to their social responsibilities and are only looking out for themselves and their investors, which is simply immoral, unethical, and has to be stopped.
In recent years, the mass production of plastic products has led to a global crisis of plastic pollution, and many controversial issues have arisen from this topic. The nature of this issue stems from the inherent usefulness of the plastics. Plastics are so common in everyday use to the point where it is hard finding a place where plastics don't exist. However, these plastic products have invaded natural ecosystems and indirectly affect humans through the consumption of fish and animals, as well as drinking water, which are now prevalent with microplastics. Modern businesses have now trended towards sustainability and renewability, which is why many businesses now choose to brand themselves as green, renewable. Plastics are only essential in day-to-day life only because consumers choose to buy plastic products. Some might not see it a big problem, but considering 91% of plastics are not recycled for future use, it is a bigger problem than some might conceive. My personal opinion is that a bigger shift in renewable alternatives must be enforced, as only a finite amount of resources and space exists on this planet, and if we don't take action now, it might be too late tomorrow.
The United Kingdom is the second largest economy in Europe. However, after a referendum in 2016, the UK has finally left the European Union early this year. Currently, there are negotiations on what the future relationship between the UK and EU would look like. If a deal is not made, this would complicate things for both sides. Now, there will no longer be any free trade between the EU and UK if there is no trade deal. Additional trade barriers and taxes will be placed on goods and services going across the English Channel. In this modern age, people commute to work across multiple European countries using trains and buses. Without a deal, people can't enter the UK so easily, so firms will lose a portion of their workers. With the threat of increased trade barriers, some companies have already left the UK for mainland Europe. Now, with how slowly things are progressing previously, and concerned comments made by EU leadership, it is unlikely that a deal could be made within the 11 months period, which would damage the British economy for years to come.
In Jan 2019, cannabis was legalized in Canada for both recreational and medicinal purposes. For many decades before, Canada, along with many other nations, had prohibited the use of cannabis. While the Cannabis Act set out by the Government of Canada formed a strict legal framework for controlling the production, distribution, sale, and possession of cannabis across Canada. The Act seeks to restrict youth from being involved in cannabis, protects young people from the promotion or enticements from the use of cannabis, deters and greatly reduces criminal activity by setting harsh criminal penalties for those who break the law, specifically those who import, export, or provide cannabis to youth, protect public health through strict product safety and quality requirements, decreases the burden of the criminal justice system, and enhances public awareness of the health risks associated with cannabis. Now you may have some interesting questions to ask. Since cannabis is now legal, how much cannabis or weed can I have? Well, adults are allowed to carry up to 30 grams of dried cannabis or its equivalent in a public space. Can I have weed in brownies? Well, you're free to consume your marijuana recreationally in any manner you see fit, as long as you don't give them to children.
Global warming has been on the rise for many years and has recently been declared as a global issue. It has brought about some of the hottest weather in the history of the world and has been the reason behind the devastating Australian wildfires. In essence, global warming is the heating of the Earth's surface. This is done through the greenhouse effect, which absorbs the sun's rays and radiates them as heat. The most common greenhouse gas is carbon dioxide, which is emitted through everyday activities such as driving cars. If a company contributes heavily to global warming, they will be condemned by society and their major stakeholders will take a hit. These stakeholders include the general public, the investors, and the employees. First and foremost, a business has a responsibility to their general public, and by contributing to global warming, they are endangering everyone. Furthermore, a business has a responsibility to their investors. By acting unethically and continuing to contribute to global warming, a company can be boycotted, which will result in large profit losses. This will make it harder for them to pay back their investors. Moreover, large profit losses result in layoffs, which sees some employees being fired and other employees stressing over the uncertainty of their jobs. All in all, if a company wants to see long-term success, management across all levels of the company must be actively looking for solutions and ways to reduce their impact on global warming.